views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Straight ahead on this edition of Perspectives, the Bronx has a lot of history right here in our very own borough. Recently, some Bronxites were recognized for their services and dedication. Plus, the black community still faces inequality and lack of opportunities in America. How far have we come, and what does the road ahead look like? Also, we'll talk to one of the Bronx councilmen and hear about some of the great things happening in our borough. That and more on this edition of Perspectives with yours truly, Daren Jaime.
What's on your mind?
Let 'em know.
What's on your mind? What's on your mind?
Let 'em know. Anything relevant to life, you bring it to the table. Whether you make a move solo or a movement with a stable. No fables, you speak on your decisions. Cause in the long run, it's your voice, your views, your vision. Keeping it real with many messages for you to know. This ain't radio, but DJ runs the show. Entertainment, he rocks it. Politics, he locks it. The host with the most would handle any topic. Don't forget to share your perspective with shines of light. Cause it might make a difference in someone else's life.
Make a difference.
What's your perspective?
Express what's in your heart and your mind. Share your perspective.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Perspectives. I am Daren Jaime, and of course, we thank you for joining us here on Perspectives. As always, we invite you to join us actually watching our show every week here on BronxNet Channel 67. If not, you can also check us out on social media. You can check us out on Facebook and Twitter, BronxNet Perspectives. Find out the latest that's happening, and then get a chance to share your perspective where you can let us know what's happening and maybe even what you like to see. But if you don't know, February is the month for African American history, Black history, however you call it. It's all about the history. And our guest in studio is a city council member for the 12th District of New York City, which includes Baychester, Co-op City, Edenwald, Eastchester, Wakefield, Williamsbridge, and those are the sections of Bronx that he covers. He's a lifelong resident of the Bronx and is known widely for his civil rights activism. And of course, he's got that bow tie. And you know those suits, baby, they ring out. Councilman Andy King joins us here in the studio. Good to have you, man.
Peace and blessings, my
Dapper,
brother. How
man,
are you?
dapper.
God bless you.
I knew I should have stepped my game up, but this is all I got to offer today, man. How you doing?
I'm great today. God is good. You know, keeps you walking, keep you talking, and keep the spirit flowing. So I'm great.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're in the dead of winter, but yet and still, it is African American History Month, Black History Month, and wanted to have you come by and share a little bit about that. We're going to be talking about Black history throughout the course of the month, but I know for you, Black history is, of course, a very important thing, and I want you to share with us a little bit because you had an opportunity in your own way to witness history in Black history with the New York Knicks.
Yes. I was blessed to be witnessing the New York Knicks' first ever Black history conversation that they had in regards to diversity and what it means to be Black in America and how they have become executives and leading one of the #1 basketball organizations in the world. And what I really appreciated and applaud President Steve Mills, what he announced when he was having this discussion about when he was hired to put this team together. You know, when he first got hired, it was his coach from Elm Corps in Queens who always watched him when he was a teenager. So when he graduated from college, he got the call from this coach and say, hey, listen, the Knicks got a job open, you know, NBA got a job open, and would you like it, NBA? So he put his resume in, and he was blessed to be able to get into the NBA. And now, as the president of the New York City, and I tell every kid, like he said, it's not always what you know, but who you know. And you never know what adults are looking at you to figure out how you can succeed them or put you in some place that you can have a position of influence and power. So one of the greatest comments that he made that night, last night was that when he looked to put together his team, he wasn't looking for white or black or anything like that. He was looking for the best individuals to help him with his vision to deliver to make the Knicks a great organization as they were. You know, hey, I go back to Clyde Frazier, Willis Reed, Nathan Bill Bradley, and you know the organization was great. But he said, "This is what I'm going to attempt to do, and how do I put that executive team together?" Just so happened, his executive team are filled with people of color, and I said, "Wow, that is a bigger message than anything else because." Blacks in America have always been told that you're second rate. Blacks in America has always been told you got to be 3 times better than your white counterpart. Blacks in America were told that you will not succeed. Black in America is told that your intellect is inferior to white intellect. But when he put together his team and did his interviews, who ended up rising to the cream of the crop? It was people of color who are now the team that's putting the Knicks together and helping the Knicks move forward.
And then when you really look at the Knicks and many NBA organizations, when it comes to African Americans, we can see them play on the court, but when it comes to ownership and front office positions, many times we don't see that.
Well, you don't, and I got to say that they are doing a masterful job. Because after we had the Black History celebration, we went into the Garden to watch the game of the Knicks, and sadly the Knicks fell. Porzingis got injured for the year, but the stands were filled to capacity. So that means you're doing something right, you know, with your intellect and marketing strategy and whatever your product you're able to deliver. Your team has still been able to fill your stands, because there are a number of organizations around the NBA who don't fill their stands. You know, so any given day, while Milwaukee is a team that, you know, that's young and youthful, that is going, they're not a Golden State that will fill up the stands, but they filled up the stands because people were still coming to see the New York Knicks play.
Amazing, amazing. So when we talk about the Bronx and Black history, like a lot of Black history here in the borough of the Bronx. I know for you as a councilman, you've had the opportunity to take some time to recognize some people in your very own area.
Yes, on February 1st, I partnered up with the Bronx Youth Empowerment Program, a program that's dear to my heart. And what we did was, this was like the 4th time we did our celebrating our history in the month of Black History, while we educated our children what yesterday was about and what they need to do today to build the greater future for themselves. We brought individuals who've done a lot of work over the course of history. And not only did we bring them in to tell their stories, you know, we were blessed to have the first African-American or Black, if you want to say, district attorney in the state of New York. And for the borough of the Bronx, female, Darcel Clark, who told her story and her journey. Also, we were able to honor the president of 100 Black Men, a number of professional Black men who are around the city, who are doing things, who are committed to their neighborhood, committed to the children, committed to just the ethic of civil rights and making sure that our communities stay strong, started by David Dinkins and a few others over 50 years ago. So honoring someone like that told a different story. When he told his story about the hiccups he had in Chicago growing up, you know, it woke up the little 13-year-old, the 14-year-old, the 17-year-old who were in the room, as well as hearing from one of the most dynamic pioneers in the civil rights movement, Hazel Dukes, the president of the NAACP New York State Conference. You know, she has a plethora of information that can be delivered, but her message to the kids was just so inspiring about never giving up and recognizing who we are as a people and never let anybody define who you are. You know, if you can take that message, you will continue to learn with yourself. And I was so excited. You know, I think one of the greatest messages that we honored Tamika Mallory, who was straight out of the Sharpton NAACP lineage, and you know, I'm thankful her parents who were there, who she gave all credit to taking her to her first, you know, NAN meeting, her first, you know, meeting of civil rights. You know, but she left the message that just was so resonant. She says, you know, she was told by an old wise woman, if you can't get a seat at the table, bring your folding chair. I said, that's real, you know, because we just need to be in the room. So her message resonated with the kids of how active they need to be and understanding that their future is predicated on what they do right now. And if you are not part of, if you don't have a seat at the table, you're part of the menu. And we don't want people to be that. So I said, I appreciate those messages that were given. And also we were blessed to have a 91-year-old Al DeCastro, who formed the East of Laconia in our neighborhood, who spearheaded a conversation in the Northeast Bronx community that led to new conversation in establishing a community center for our children in our neighborhood. And I'm glad to say, you know, the speaker, Carl Hasty, and myself, and Senator Jamal Bailey, the Ruben Diaz, the borough president, and the mayor, we all came together. And by 2020, we will have a new YMCA that will be built on East 229th Street in our district. You know, because of Al DeCastro, I'm grateful and thankful to him. He gave me my first community ever award. So I applaud all the work he's done at 91 years young.
Awesome. Listen, why don't you stay with us? We got more with Councilman Andy King talking about Black history. What are the struggles that we're still facing today that must be overcome? We'll talk about that. Also, March 5th holds a very special day to the councilman. We'll explain that and more. We'll return right here on Perspectives.
We are neighbors and best friends.
I love my sister.
My heart doesn't see race. Love is love.
Our family is no less than any other family.
Love is kind, love is patient.
We encourage you to get to know your borough, but also get to know the history. There's a lot of history, and when we're talking about African American history, right here on the show, Councilman Andy King joining us in studio, and we hear a lot of names associated with African American history, traditional names, but what comes to mind for you?
Well, you know, this is what I say to us. When it comes to the day that Carter G. Woodson was able to get established as Black History Month, and President Ford actually signed it into law. So Black History Month is dedicated throughout the United States. It's not just in any particular state or just in New York. It's throughout the United States of America. But I say to our children, to each and every one of us, when February rolls around, the conversation needs to go beyond February, to understand who we are, to understand what we've contributed to society. More importantly, understand that we have built America. And when you understand that, you don't separate yourself from the history of us, because the everyday things that we get accomplished or we rely on, Black folks have been the ones who put them together. We always hear about the Dr. King. We always hear about the Harriet Tubman or Sojourner Truth. But I want to ask, you know, the folks out there, how many of you have heard of Dr. Daniel Hale Williams, you know, who performed the first open heart surgery, you know, that keeps us alive and keep us growing? And how many of us have heard actually of Janny Mazinger, who invented the shoe, the sole for the shoe? You know, we always rely on shoes to move around the machine that helps us keep it going, get the show. No one ever thinks about, you know, those things that help us move around. And alone, how many of us have a conversation about Lewis Howard Latimer? You know, Thomas Edison gets credit for the light bulb. Without the filament inside the light bulb, these lights mean absolutely nothing. The bulbs mean absolutely nothing, but it was a Black man. All these were Black folks who put all this together that we rely on to keep our heart going, keep us moving and grooving, keep our feet and soles together so we can move around. And then someone got the lights on so we can see what the heck we're doing. So it was all of us that made it happen. So we need to understand that Black history is more than just the civil rights movement. Black history just didn't start in the 50s and 60s. Black history didn't start long before we came to this landmass called America. But we need to understand it, and we need to understand that even whether you're from Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Dominica, Haiti, Georgia, Alabama, St. Kitts, Montserrat, the Virgin Islands, you're Black in America when you land on this soil. And if we can understand that, we don't get separated and divided by the system who's always operating. Jim Crow still in effect.
Yeah, it is. And Michelle Alexander writes the new Jim Crow and talks about the new Jim Crow, which brings me to the question of, when we look at the challenges facing African Americans today, what do you outline them as what do you outline as the heaviest of them?
I think the biggest challenge that we have as Blacks in America is knowing who we are. Because see, once you know who you are, you can, and you know, I used a quote, I said, for this month, I asked people to remember, rejuvenate, and then respond, you know? Because once you understand what it was, you know, if you can remember what happened and you can relate to what happened, then you can rejuvenate yourself to do something different in this era. Because there is so much that needs to get done. As much as we thought we've kicked the ball down the road, there have been so many policies and strategies put in place to give the perception that we have arrived, when technically we haven't 100% arrived, and there's so much work that needs to be done. If not, we still wouldn't be fighting and advocating for people to give us the just due that we deserve.
You're known as an activist who blazes around the city dealing with issues in communities of color and for all people. But when you look at the activism and those people who really struck a fire under you to get you to be the activists that you are today, who would that be?
You know, for me, I go back to the Most High in Christ because I understand his purpose when he walked on this planet to help his brother. And he was sent down to save a set of people, educate them, bring them awareness of who they are. And these are the rules that will guide you to move forward. Because, see, we may ignore our spirituality until we need to call on our spirituality. And when I say by that, you know, we deal with NYPD, and when things go wrong or you have a crisis, whether it's financial, economic in your school, you know, after you say, Lord Jesus, help me, then you start doing everything else. You know, so you can't ignore them in your everyday life. So for me, my wisdom, my strength, my spirituality comes from the man up above. But then when you look at the people on the earth who've done some things, you know, I appreciate, you know, the strength and the messaging of a Harriet Tubman, you know, where I could have freed more slaves if they knew they were enslaved. You know, I understand the messaging of a Malcolm X, you know. It's not that I'm anti-white, I'm just pro-black, and there's nothing wrong with it. You know, I appreciate a Dr. King, you know, giving us to say, hey, listen, the true definition of a man is not in a moment, I'm paraphrasing, a moment of sign of his strength is not in the sign of weakness, confidence, weakness. So that helps us define who we are when we go through some stuff. But then again, helping us understand not only these little quotes by individuals who are out there, but the people who built the society. You know, the names I just rolled off who did open heart surgery. The first person who created the freezer for us so we can freeze our food. Someone who created the air conditioner to freeze our food. Someone who created the comb so we can comb our hair. Someone who's created an iron and an iron board. Those were all black folks that did all of this. But no one was being taught that things that we rely on, it was we as a people who made it happen.
A program that's near and dear to you, the Bronx Youth Empowerment Program. How do you empower young people today to keep them, first, culturally aware and then empowered in this particular area? Well, again, it always goes back to information and education. And when you get educated on, you know, real talk and real truths, some people are afraid to do that. You know, why? I go back to spirituality because we fight principles and principalities in high places that are managing a whole lot of society. But to have a real conversation with kids, I'm not going to give you fluff. I'm going to give you something that's going to help you save your life. Because in the day school, they may give you the X and the O's is to get you someplace. But how do you manage all of that during your everyday life? No one's telling you how to deal with everyday life. They're just telling you, okay, learn algebra, learn science. You know, but how do you apply that when you're trying to walk from point A to point B? You got to deal with gangs. You got to deal with technology. You got to deal with messaging that's on the TV, whether it's the Housewives of Atlanta or Bugs Bunny beating up somebody up and not realizing how violent cartoons are today. And kids think that you can go hit somebody in the head. You can't erase them away and draw them back. Once you hurt somebody and they're gone, they're gone. Now you got to deal with a whole set of issues because you just physically hurt somebody and mentally hurt an entire family. So in the Bronx Youth Empowerment Program, we have real conversations with our kids. We empower them by allowing them to think, but more importantly, taking that information and sharing it with their peers, organizing events themselves, empower them to say, hey, once we read something, talk about it. It only works if you work it. So you got to utilize the things that you use. You know, you learn. And a lot of people don't. They get something today and they forget about it. Try to speak Spanish when you never practice Spanish. You'll forget as soon as you walk out of the room. Right.
You know, so this is what we say to people. You got to use the things that you learn, whether it's algebra or whether it's words that you hear for the first time. Find the definitions of them and then apply them to your everyday vocabulary. That, again, helps you compete in a society you've already said you were not equal from the start.
Andy King, Councilman, is here with us, and we'll be back with more with him in just a moment, breaking down black history and really what it means and keeping us empowered. Stay with us. We'll be right back in a few.
Well, Thomas, you've got prediabetes. But with more exercise and a change in diet, it can be reversed.
I've tried exercising. It just makes me hungry for bacon.
I love bacon, too. And who really likes to exercise?
Not me.
Me neither.
Nobody. So we're good?
What? Oh, you still have prediabetes. Big time.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Behold the angry giant. Behold the angry giant. Behold the angry giant. Behold the angry giant.
It only takes a moment to make a moment. Take time to be a dad today.
Well, we're back. Our topic of conversation, Black history. Our guest, Councilman Andy King. We continue our conversation with him. And Andy, I want to ask you this. We're talking about civil rights, human rights. I know in March, there's a specific time, March 5th is a very special time for you, dealing with the whole issue of human rights that's associated with all of our history.
Yes. In November 2016, I was able to get the City Council to pass a resolution. One, asking Congress to amend the United States Constitution, adding language that negates the 3/5 clause. Secondly, declaring March 5th as 3/5 clause awareness day. For those of you who have no clue what the 3/5 clause is, give you a quick history. I went and asked about the 3/5 clause, and the 3/5 clause says it came about at the 1787 Constitutional Convention. The North and the South were trying to understand representation in Washington. Slavery existed at that point. Everyone knows 99.9% of the slaves look like who? Us sitting here. So the white slave owner in the North and the South, they all came together and said, told the North, you're not going to have, South, you're not going to have more representation in Washington because of the population. So what they did was considered the black slave as property and counted them as 3/5 of a human being. That language still exists in the United States Constitution today.
Right.
So when I went to Congress at a Black History event 4 years ago, when I figured out the topic, I asked them, I said, you know, we should do away with this and put it out, remove it. They said, we don't remove anything out of the Constitution. We amend the Constitution. By the way, the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th Amendment supersedes it and does away with it. I said, oh, okay. Let me go see what those three amendments actually say.
Right.
The 13th Amendment says slavery is unlawful in the Union unless you are in prison. So today, slavery exists under the name incarceration.
Right.
So in the 14th Amendment said, if you were born in this country, you have all the rights, protection, and privileges under the Constitution. Citizenship. The 15th Amendment gave the black man the right to vote, not the not the black woman, the black man the right to vote. Mm-hmm. And we still know, you know, until the voters' rights of today that all of our communities were not able to vote. And every 25th year, we're still voting to get permission to vote again. Find it really absurd. So when I went back to Congress and said, hey, listen, you told me that these three amendments did away with the 3/5 clause, but none of them address a language to say that the system who told me that was 3/5 of an individual from the start, of a human person from the start, is now 100% whole to a system who said I wasn't. The reaction I got from Congress was, I said, okay. So I went back I went to the City Council and said, we need to pass this, put this resolution and pass it in. So in November 2016, we were able to pass it in the City Council. I thank my colleagues in the council to recognizing that there is a challenge here. And it's with President Trump, Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell, Nancy Pelosi, all have, as well as the Black Congressional Caucus, who was looking to push it. So I'm relying on Congressmember Meeks, Ming, Ingle, Yvette Clark, and Hakeem Jeffries, the New York delegation, to have more conversation. I met with Cedric Richmond, who is the chair of the Black Congressional Caucus, to figure out how we move this in Congress, because we do a lot in around America. And I was asked, will this change the thinking of people? Our country works on black and white on paper. So in order for you to change policies, to change funding, you got to say that people are equal, and the people that you said weren't equal are blacks. Blacks can go through whatever we go through in this country. You have people come from other nations who will look at us with distaste and disdain because we've been labeled in America as somebody who's always inferior. And all conversations, all advertisement, all news coverage will always present our kids with stuff that leads them off the cliff. I want to be able to be a place that we can be empowered as people of color. And I think on March 5th, we'll be having this conversation. We're looking to host it at the Audubon Theater where Malcolm X was unfortunately assassinated. Have it there with a whole host of individuals like D.L. Hughley and Dr. Muhammad, Hafiz Muhammad, as well as Hazel Dukes, pioneers, you know, in understanding, as well as Congress, to be in that room to have this conversation.
Amazing conversation that needs to be had, and hopefully we'll stay tuned. The perspectives will continue to follow that, and when that comes about, we'll bring you the details. But Councilman King, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us.
My honor and pleasure.
Happy Black History Month to you.
Yes, same to you.
Good work, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Black history is our history.
That's right. That's right. In order to know where you come from, or I should say in order to know where you're going, you got to know where you come from.
Exactly.
For all of us here on the Set of Perspectives, I am Daren Jaime. Hey, thank you for watching. Until next time we meet, stay safe, share your perspective with somebody else. It just might make a difference in someone else's life. Take care.
What's your perspective?
Let them know.
Well, I got this as a paid internship. Spending my time here, I really enjoyed the people that work here. I enjoy what goes on behind the scenes.
So far, I've learned how to operate a camera, how to host. I learned how to control audio.
My first time hosting was really nerve-wracking, but I really enjoyed it because it was a new experience.
They call me Maxie, but I prefer tripod. I was your above-average four-legged homie, and then wham, bam, minivan. Some people pity me. Now that's lame. I still run, fetch, and swim. And the ladies love me. I'm the ultimate wingman. Just don't ask me to high five.